G'day, friends and fans. Welcome to Writing Quarter 67. Writing's a conversation. It's a chat. Let's treat it as a fireside chat with your audience. I'm your host, the author, David Applegate, author of the books The ProWritingAid, in Power Games, and Into the Owl's Mound. Now, before I begin, I'd like to remind you that I'm sponsored by you, the viewing audience. So please, can you take a moment to like, share, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe. Well, follow. X subscriptions will be hopefully starting soon. But I'd like to hope that some of you will join those who are the growing community of those who donate, well, Patreon, or buy merch, or of course, buy my books. Please and thank you. Now, just try to make this brief. When you're writing, try to imagine that you're having this conversation and that the dialogue is the dialogue you're having, and that the descriptions are you telling a recount of what you saw. Now, I know a lot of people also want feelings and other sensations. But the primary sense, of course, is going to be sight. And then sound. And most of that sound is going to be dialogue. Try to keep, I know it's hard. A lot of books these days don't have much description. A lot of it's just dialogue heavy because they're written for TV or they're written for movies, which is all dialogue heavy. A lot of anime in particular is dialogue heavy. That's not to say it's a bad thing. It's just find your style. A lot of people are trying to copy styles these days, but you know what happens when you chase a trend? You miss it. Because all these people who wrote these amazing stories that trended, they wrote amazing stories from the heart. So try to think of your writing as a conversation with your audience, what you want to tell them. As much as I don't like The Acolyte, and I would normally break down it as bad writing, it's still the message that it's still the conversation. At the end of the day, it is the conversation that Ms. Headland wants to have with her audience. Whether or not you agree with that message, that's not the point. The point I'm making is she is writing to have a conversation with her audience. Eric Kripke is having a conversation with his audience. J.K. Rowling had a conversation with her audience. Now, she used, abused, and abandoned them. That's beside the point. The normies took over Harry Potter. Originally, it was the outsiders, the disenfranchised and the disenchanted. And I've seen many early Potterhead videos, so I know what I'm talking about when I say a lot of trans people and a lot of gay people picked up Harry Potter as a coming out story of theirs. And when J.K. Rowling turned on them, they, of course, were angry. And to some extent, whether you agree with The Mandalorian or various other Star Wars stories, they're all written by people who wanted to have a conversation. Whether you agree or not, I honestly think that The Acolyte would have done better if it wasn't Star Wars. I honestly think a lot of Star Wars these days, even go back to the Clone Wars, they aren't the stories. They aren't the Star Wars universe. But that aside, they are writers having a conversation with their audience. And you got to attack it from the point of saying, well, yes, I'm not, I know a lot of people can't take criticism. Myself, I'm not claiming that I am immune from, criticism, but at the same time, I often find that a lot of people are not valid in their criticism. It's very hard, though, to describe to you what valid criticism feels like, but I'll try. Valid criticism feels like you're not having a conversation. It feels like this is what I'll use the Mandalorian versus the Acolyte. In the Mandalorian, I feel like Dave Filoni was trying to tell us a story here, whereas Headland is standing up here on the ledge and shouting down at you, and she can't hear you. She doesn't want to hear you. She's just megaphoning away. And everything is bam, 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 bam. Whether it fits, whether it belongs. And see, the reason I say that is because she's rebuilding a world that's not hers as hers. Which is why I said it would do better if it wasn't Star Wars. But all activists, all they care about is infiltration and destruction in their wake, destroy the old, rebuild the new. All glory to the progress. No forethought why these institutions or any of these stories resonated with people. No, bro, it's got to be my story, my glory. You know. The thing is, then when they have glory, let's take George Lucas. George Lucas used to be a nobody. He deconstructed fairy tales and fantasy and fiction and poured it into science fantasy, a very niche, very uninspired at the time. And whether you agree with me or not, he had a conversation with his audience and it resonated. But then he walked away and others took up the mantle. George did not write most of Star Wars. He was working on American Graffiti and got Krasden to finish the dialogue and most of the story. And then they never gave him credit until 20 years later. I think it was 20 years later. And then when George went on tours, he was talking about stuff in the movies and Star Wars. And, well, eventually they had an interview with Lucas and his writing group. Turned out Star Wars was made by a committee of 20 guys. And they had about 15,000 people put together the movie because you got the cast, the crew, all the staff at Fox. It's incredible how many people actually go into making these movies. But then George got arrogant and he walked away. And Fox wanted more, so you had Empire Strikes Back and then Return of the Jedi. But after Return of the Jedi, what could they do? They pitched many stories. They tried. And Lucas, well, just settled into making games. And that really expanded the universe. And we really got new and diverse characters. We got new and diverse powers. And at no time did they ever change the old. So when you talk with the audience and having a conversation with the audience, that's been on par with the audience because they know the world, they've seen the world build up, and you're not deconstructing the past. You're not reinventing it. When you tell them, when you tell them the Force, I'll use the Force to fly across the room. You understand the Force. But when somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to thread you," it's like, what? Or, where I understand a lot of things went wrong when they backlashed over Force healing. Because again, and that goes back to the things I've said in past videos, where most people do not know even most fans don't read the source material. They don't read the books. They don't look at the prequel comics or prequel books that come out. Star Wars is too much material for most people anyway to afford. But there was a Dark Forces game where force healing was introduced. But many of these modern fans, I tried to tell them, hey, bro, Dark Forces had force healing. They attacked me. They literally tried to drive me out of the fandom. They literally attacked my YouTube. They attacked my channel. They copyright strike me. Literally, the so-called fandom menace, the so-called friends of the... We're all friends. Well, it turns out they're not all friends. They merely wanted to use my experience at the time for having a channel before them to grow their channel, and then once they've done with me, they cut me out. But that's the way it goes, how selfish people are in this world. And why it's so hard sometimes to have a conversation with the audience. But trust me, whether the only problem I have is when somebody goes, I'm up here telling you this is my Star Wars now. And let's move on. Move on to other franchises. It's happening with multiple franchises. But the thing is, I really wish Star Trek did not go backwards. I'm really starting to worry about people who go, right, we progressed eras, now we're going to go back. I mean, why can't we have a new space adventure Odyssey? Why do we have to keep perpetuating Star Trek? I know myself. I know in franchise books that have gone on for decades about Tank Lord and Metal Mage and quite a number reached 15, 16. Some book franchises really, I mean, Agatha Christie's Murder Mysteries. But you know what made them different, or why they lasted? It's because the audience knew from beginning to end the world. And that is because the Wheel of Time. Because the writer had a conversation with the audience, and at no time did they stand up and get on a soapbox and then talk down to them and tell them what to believe, even though that all this up until now and again there are twists and plots where you get a story where the good guy is the bad guy from a certain point of view. Let's look at Harry Potter. From a certain point of view, Dumbledore is not a good guy. From the way he used Snape, the way he used all his friends, the way he used Harry, the way he lied to people, the way he didn't trust anybody. And you may say, oh, but Voldemort can read minds, blah, 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 blah. Well, yeah. It's basically... This is the problem I have with Harry Potter, is that it is full of plot conveniences and things that always fall into place just for Harry, the chosen one, you know. And it's like, no, bro, you look at anything he's done and there's nothing spectacular or special. And that's the thing. It's all Harry Potter is just one big deconstruction of the chosen one mythology. And that's why it's wearing off. But of course, because when a big franchise like Harry Potter wears off, it wears off slow. Star Wars is just wearing off faster because it's has lost its way. If you want to sustain your audience, like most writers, you got to be consistent. If you have a character, consistent. If you want your character to be revealed as a bad guy, I mean, maybe drop hints. And if somebody asks, hey, is so-and-so a bad guy? At least J.K. Rowling got that right when she was asked about Snape and says, we'll see what the future holds. And if somebody says, oh, you retconned the character, see, that's the problem with it. If you do an abrupt change, you will always have that criticism. How you deal with it is up to you. But if you're having a proper conversation with conversation with the audience, you'd be able to point and say, yeah, Voldemort's motive was the fear of death. Snape's was the love of Harry's mother. Harry's father was just a good time slacker who just stumbled into fame and fortune because family lineage, and thought he knew better and got himself killed. Dumbledore was an untrusting, meddling old fool who didn't want to rip the Band-Aid off and admit that he was wrong and raise the Dark Wizard. And then hoped when the Dark Wizard disappeared that he'd stay disappeared instead of finding out what the twat was up to. I mean, there's all lessons in society in Harry Potter, which is why it resonates so well with people. But I mean, instead of mimicking somebody else's success, I know a lot of books on success will tell you that in order to be successful, you have to mimic the successful. But look around. It's not working. Why is video games more popular than movies? Because they're better at storytelling. Why are so many video games failing? Because there's no story, or they change the story. You look at why people are outraged over Dune right now. Because most of them haven't read. Only 17% of Americans read. And that's decreased by 1% every year since 1956, I believe, when Gallup first started taking these polls. 1 in 3 people who buy a book don't read it. A lot of people are upset over Dune because they found out there's stuff in Dune, in the books, that aren't in the movies, that are quite horrific. Particularly about Baron Harkonnen, which actually, if you'd seen the David Lynch version, you'd know. But anyway, that's all I got for you. It's hopefully, I mean, I'm not accusing anybody of in particular, but I'm just saying that a lot of modern books don't have the same feel, don't have the same. I'm on your side. I'm the author is talking to their audience as if they're their friend, but you feel it in, and that's you. All you have to do is have enough beta readers tell you it feels like a conversation, and then you're satisfied. If you if that's your audience, that's right, that's fair, because you can't take a fantasy fan and turn them into a horror fan overnight, or a hard science fiction fan into a science fantasy fan. No. But unfortunately, when things get popular, the normies move in, and they well, we shouldn't call them normies. We should just call them fan followers, because that's what they are. And they ruin franchises, every franchise. It's not new to Star Wars. It's every franchise. They ruin it by making it about them, by simplifying everything and wanting it to be more relatable, and then more like our world. And then when they've finished meddling, they move on to the next franchise and leave everything in their wake. But toxic fandom is a story for another day, and hopefully, I'm not accusing anybody, but hopefully this has helped you as much as my realization that writing is a conversation with your audience. And thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to go the extra mile, support the channel, help me make a living. I like to have people support me directly through Ko-Fi, or becoming a patron, buying my books, or buying the merch. Please and thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you, whether you support the channel with a like, a share, a subscribe, or a purchase. All your help is appreciated. Please and thank you. See you in the next video.